Hello out there. I'm Chris Bisha, editor-in-chief of 360degreesound.com. As part of our South by Southwest 2024 Spotlight series, I'm joined today by Bess Kargman, director of a new documentary film, Diane Warren, Relentless, about the life and work of award-winning songwriter Diane Warren. It's a remarkable film that describes the arc of Diane's life, from her childhood in Van Nuys, California, through her early songwriting success, and eventually the establishment of one of the most valuable publishing companies in the music business. She's the songwriter behind countless chart hits and film soundtrack smashes, from DeBarge's 1983 hit Rhythm of the Night to 2022 TikTok sensation Only Love Can Hurt Like This, recorded by Paloma Faith, and this year's Oscar-nominated The Fire Inside from the film Flamin' Hot, recorded by Becky G. Diane has won Emmy, Grammy, Golden Globe, and an honorary Academy Award. As a director and producer, Bess Kargman's previous work has won awards at Doc NYC and the Tribeca Film Festival, as well as other prestigious film festivals. She won a Producers Guild Award in 2021 and was nominated for an Emmy for Defying Gravity, the untold story of women's gymnastics. Welcome, Bess. Thank you for joining me ahead
Thank
of
you
the
for having
world
me.
premiere at South by Southwest.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. It's exciting to finally premiere this film. It's a wonderful, wonderful moment for this film.
Yeah, it's great. It's interesting. I learned of your film about the same time I started watching Star Trek Enterprise, and they have a theme usually, and this one has a theme song, and so I'm like, man, this sounds a lot like a Diane Warren power ballad, and sure enough, the credit comes up, theme by Diane Warren, performed by Russell Watson. So Diane
Wow.
Diane Warren compositions are literally everywhere. Um, So I love this film. It's a fascinating deep dive into the story of this compelling and enigmatic figure. We all know her songs, and now we get a chance to know a little bit about the person behind them. So how did you get connected to the project, Bess?
The great question. So the crazy thing is that I feel like I was meant to do this film because when I was 18 years old, I was singing her music a cappella in college. So I'd known who Diane Warren is, but I had always wanted, I've done documentaries about dance and about sports, but I had never done a music film. And I'd been waiting, sort of chomping at the bit for the right project for me. And this was brought to me, and I was vying for it against some other directors. And I really pitched hard because it's such a perfect fit for me. I really think that not only the music, but her personal story, the mixture of them together is such a gift as a director to be given. And then it was sort of my job just to get out of the way and let her story unfold in front of the camera.
Judging by the key events that you had the privilege of filming, Diane, and it looks like this was an ongoing project for some time. Can you tell me about the journey you went on gathering the great contributions that you got for the film?
Yeah, so you're right. It's been about 2.5 to 3 years since we began this project, since I first met Diane. And the goal was always to sort of swoop in and swoop out of her life, both to manage her camera fatigue, because she definitely liked getting back to her songwriting. It was never one of those things where we were able to film for, consecutive weeks at a time. But that's usually my approach, which is to swoop in and swoop out of someone's life. And what allowed us, the freedom that we had over the course of 2.5 years, was to see what would unfold in her life, and also to hear from all these other interesting voices, both her friends who had known her since she was 13, and people who work with her, and collaborators, to some of the greatest vocalists of all time, and to hear from them and how indebted they are to her, because of the hits that she's written for them.
Yeah. And kind of rolling back a little bit, it seems that both her parents had were motivating factors in her career for very different reasons. And you drilled through her hard rock exterior and got to some pretty raw stuff. What was it like digging into Diane's upbringing with her?
A great question. So it took time. I definitely needed to earn Diane's trust in order to get her to open up. I could sense very early on, like from my first interview with Diane, that there were a list of questions I would have to wait to ask her way down the road. When she doesn't want to answer a question, she usually replies with sort of like a joke or something a little flippant. And that's your cue that you need to circle back with that question later down the road. But there were no questions that were off the table, which, well, maybe that's because that's my rule, which is like, I'm going to ask you anything I want. And if you don't want to answer it, that's your right. But it's my right, to ask you what I think is going to interest the audience. The other thing about it is we began filming at the height of COVID, like deep in the middle of COVID. So there was an added challenge there because to really get to know someone, usually it's spending time with them, both with the cameras on and with the cameras off, and like a witty banter, between the two of, and that was sort of not a lot, I couldn't even really get that close to her. So there was a crazy moment where she was coming up with all these jokes and I was wearing a mask. You try and smize when you're filming, especially Diane likes people laughing at her jokes and likes to feel heard and know that you're really engaging with her. But she wasn't vaccinated. She hadn't been given her vaccination yet. And so I had to stay far away. And she had a moment where she was like, I don't know if Bess is the right director for this project. I don't think she gets me. She's not laughing at my jokes. But no one wants to hear the director's voice, like laughing at one of her jokes or hear me talking, in the audio. So Cindy, her dear friend and her assistant pulled me aside and was like, if this is going to work, you really need to know that Diane doesn't get that feedback from you. And I was like, all right, I have to take her out for dinner, masks off, and really get to know her and have her get to know me. It's two-way street there. And after that moment, everything changed, which was really important to getting her to open up and actually really honestly to be able to push her, to prevent her from making a joke with some of my questions. So that was the process there.
Yeah, that may speak to some of her neurodiversity as well. And the original production description of Relentless ended with the line, how she's turned her neurodiversity from a setback into her superpower. I love that line. Why did it get removed from the description?
Probably cut for time. Like probably we were given a few less words for no other reason, because I love that line. I think
Yeah.
that's a great line. Maybe the word count changed.
I
But yeah, I think it's something not everyone knows about Diane Warren, and also, and I should say what that is. So she much later in life, and she always knew, I think, that she was a little different, and she had been meanly described that way by bullies in school as different, but sometimes being different is actually a gift and leads you on a different path. So I did not know that about her. I did not know that she had been assessed as someone who's on the spectrum until a while into meeting her, actually. And it's not that she was hiding it from the public. She doesn't find that interesting. She doesn't feel that people like need to know it, because who cares? And I kind of love how understated she is about it. It's not that she's hiding it. It's just like, So what? This is who I am. It doesn't define me. So the fact that she's has Asperger's is kind of awesome. It's again like her superpower. And it's nothing that she finds very special. You know, she's like, I'm just Diane Warren. You can describe me as you want, but I'm just me.
Yeah, she has some funny jokes about Asperger in the
Yeah,
film too.
vegan Asperger's.
Yeah, exactly. Um, you spend a good chunk of screen time exploring Diane's aversion to romantic relationships, despite writing passionate songs about love. Several of your contributors weigh in on that, including Paul Stanley of Kiss, who says it's easier to write about heartache when you don't have to live it, but you fear it. Tell me about presenting that dichotomy in the film.
Yeah, so that was Diane's disinterest in romantic relationships is one of the most fascinating aspects of her personal life. I wanted to unpack that as much as I could. You know, no one really gets to the deepest core of another human. No one can fully know who she is, nor who any of us are. But I think it just shows sort of the incredibleness of artistry when you can tap into something that on a day-to-day basis you're not even feeling. Maybe there's something in her subconscious coming to play there with her lack of desire to be in a relationship and have romantic love, but her desire to write so many songs about yearning and romantic love or heartbreak. It's truly fascinating. And it was always a goal from the beginning to have people saying opposite things, people around her who have known her for a long time. So like someone said, you know, it's fantasy. And then someone was like, she does not fantasize about that at all. And someone said, you know, it comes from, you know, like Diane even says, you know, she's always got her ear out. And it's true, actually. Like she has this great story that she told us, which couldn't make it into the film because we knew that no one wanted a 3-hour documentary, but it would have been so easy to make one, where she said a friend of hers was having an affair. And she was like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, can I draw inspiration from this? And then she wrote a song called like You're the Right Kind of Wrong. And she was calling her friend being like, okay, like with your affair, like, is this how you're feeling? And how are your emotions? So she really draws inspiration from everywhere, even if she's not the one living that affair, but she uses that inspiration. Yeah, it's incredible to see, you know, there's a saying, you know, write what you know, but who knows? Maybe deep down inside, Diane actually knows everything that she's writing about, but no one will really know the truth.
She has a great line. It's like method acting. I am the character.
Mhm.
I thought that was brilliant insight into her own process. Um, and speaking of process, um, you know, she famously doesn't like to talk about process. There you have a whole bit in there, process. I'm not talking about process. And but you got her to talk about process, especially talking about don't want to miss a thing, the Aerosmith song. So how'd you do that? How'd you pull that off?
Thank you, Chris, for noticing this process stuff because you can't make a song about a songwriter and not have the audience learn about process. They would feel so unsatisfied. But every time I asked Diane about process, you know, I was met with, oh, you know, it's just my process is that I get to, you know, that I get to work. And I really truly think she has a work ethic that very few people have. But the audience does want to know that you spend a full day maybe only focusing on one tiny phrase of a song that is of interest to us.
It's
So I think it's a compilation of 2.5 years of little nuggets of her process, you know, pulling those out. and fighting for those moments. But I also left in moments when she was saying, you know, I need to go work on a song, and I say to her, can we film that? And she's like, no, like, no, you know, I wanted the audience to feel what it was like for me as the director to come up against that. And her process, she thinks is boring, but it's not. It's really interesting. I love how detail oriented she is. I mean, if there's like a rhyme in a song that she doesn't feel is right, she'll be walking down the street and she'll type something into her phone. If like she came up with that better phrasing or that different line in a song, she has to stop right away and write down those words. So it's a cool process that's all encompassing. I mean, she arrives today and she asked for us to rent her a guitar for the 48 hours that she is here in Austin, Texas. So
It won't be too difficult in Austin.
no, it won't.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love just talking about Don't Want to Miss a Thing. You show the bit of the interview with Barbara Streisand and James Brolin, and he basically says, you know, the exact same sentiment about her. So I love how you brought in how her inspiration came from lots of different places.
Yeah.
Um, so um, one of her early successes was Laura Branigan's version of Solitaire, for which Diane wrote the English lyrics. And Jack White, Branigan's producer, provides one of the most cringe-worthy moments of the film. Tell me about that situation and how you got White to contribute to the film.
So this is what's so interesting. Diane has either done a lot of self-work or she's so now in a place of her life where past problems she's come to terms with, because she has no anger towards Jack White. And even they went out for lunch less than a decade ago and has shared memories together. And she was the one who suggested I interview him, actually. And I was like, what? That, like, I always was planning on it. But with her blessing, that was even greater. But I was going to interview him no matter what. They're cool now, because without that huge contentious like double lawsuit with Jack White, she wouldn't own all of her own music. And Diane is so sort of like controlling over her intellectual property that she thinks it's the greatest gift that she wasn't allowed to sign with other publishers due to the lawsuit, because now she owns all of the publishing of, you know, of anything that comes out of her brain. So she says she's so grateful to Jack White for, you know, playing a role in you know, what led to her ownership of her songs. But back then it was really contentious, really contentious. I think a lot of songwriters and a lot of artists have those stories of feeling like they were taken advantage of at the beginning of their careers. So I think a lot of people in the, you know, artists and musicians, singers will really empathize with her story at the beginning of her career.
Yeah, and you got a great comment from her attorney. Her name's Donitz, I believe. You know, said, "Hey, you can start your own company,
Yeah.
publish your stuff yourself." That's
Yeah.
great that she had that kind of advice from her inner circle at that time.
Yeah.
Now, for me, Diane's relationship with her cat, Mouse, is the emotional heart of the film. I mean, we have cats, and I got really choked up with what happens to Mouse. So tell me about her relationship with Mouse and capturing that really powerful moment.
So her relationship with her cat named Mouse was something that it was one of the first things I observed. It was very apparent to me that the cat was going to play a role in the film, because first scene we ever shot was when she stays up all night before the Academy Award nominations. And she was so concerned with, like, where's the cat? No one let the cat out because there are coyotes in the hills where she lives. And everything was like making sure the cat was okay and monitoring the cat. And I had observed that the cat looked very old. And I thought maybe there would be a story there eventually. So I knew that, I mean, the timing was not planned, that the timing of the cat's passing was not planned, you know, and it didn't need to be a story if the cat, you know, was alive and well today. We always would have talked about her love of cats. I mean, boy, she is such an animal lover, but she's a very special bond with that cat. I really fought to include the footage, the scene of Diane's, you know, cat passing away, because next to her father's death, I think it was one of the most painful days of her life. So I knew it had to be in the film, and someone, you know, who was with her that day happened to be filming, and took me 6 months of begging Diane for that footage. You know, Diane doesn't have control over this film, but she did have control over that footage because she took it herself. And finally, she gave it to me. She knew I wanted it from the minute that, you know, I tried to get in there. I was told, you know, she's just not in a state to have anyone around her. But I did try and get in there. I got in there the next day. So when she's talking about a bit, it's from the next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really emotional scene. I didn't put in that scene to be like manipulative to the audience. I put in that scene because to show Diane really like in that stage. I mean, she could be, you know, Unbreak My Heart could be about her cat's passing, you know, it doesn't need to be about a lover. So that was a real moment in the film. Her cat's passing away that I hope audiences will feel, you know, she was
Super
really
good.
in a dark state.
Yeah. And, you know, between that and, you know, talking about the Rebel Rescue Ranch, I think it really softens that, you know, hard exterior that she tries to put out to the public. So I'm really glad that you included that bit about the ranch too. But I don't want to let you go without talking a little bit about the Academy Awards, since they just happened last night. You dedicate a significant amount of film time to depicting Diane's strong desire to win an Academy Award, not just the honorary award that she was graciously given. Why was it important to tell? Why was that important to telling her story?
So Diana has achieved every award you can think of, but for one award. And she's not, I will say, she's not so award focused that it drives her daily activities. Growing up, and she talks about this in the film, she would watch the Oscars as a kid, you know, on the floor of her living room with her parents. And it holds very special meaning to her, especially with a mom who didn't really believe in this career path for her. So I think her someday, and I know she will, win that competitive Oscar is a little bit of like, look, mom, I did it. I did it. And you didn't have to support me because I did this all on my own. I think there's a little bit of that, but that's not what totally drives her. I think what really drives her is this is her. Not many of us have a life's passion that is so all consuming that it's really truly one of the only things we care about at all, you know, at the expense of relationships. You know, she didn't want children. It's you know, she has to leave parties early to go back and write songs. That I'm trying to liken it to, like, if you had a child, it's kind of like the moment that your child achieves what your child really wanted to achieve. You know, it's not about her winning the Oscar. It's about like her song getting that recognition that it, you know, one day deserves. So that's why we focused a bit on her desire for an Oscar. Also, you know, she's as she loves to joke, she's one of the biggest losers of all time. But, Freud said there's no such thing as a joke, right? So when she jokes about being the biggest loser, that everyone, when we're faced with rejection, even if we make a joke about it, we're hurting. But I do believe her when she says she would rather get 15 nominations than one win. I do believe that it gives her great joy to earn an Oscar nomination.
Yeah. And I love that you included the clip. It's the Susan Lucci of Oscar nominations. So I was a big soap fan back in the day. So, yeah, and my wife and I watched the Academy Awards last night, and I was just holy. I saw Flamin' Hot at South by last year, and it was a great film, and it's a great song. And we were just pulling for Diane, and then to lose again to Billie Eilish. I mean, nothing against Billie Eilish, but come on, you know, give the
Well,
woman
who
some
knows?
recognition.
I know she'll win someday. So,
Well, she ain't gonna stop, right? Until
no, no,
until they snuff her flame out, right?
right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on with the premiere tomorrow, and I'm sure you got some other interviews lined up. And I'm just really grateful that you took this time to speak with me today. Thank you very much, Besson.
I'm grateful that you love the film. It's so gratifying that this film is now being presented to the world. So
Yeah. I think it's going to really connect with audiences, and I wish you lots of success. Do you have anything to add about distribution?
that's a great question. So the film is for sale, and it's a really great time for music documentaries in the landscape of the documentaries that are being released right now. So we trust that it will sell. We really wanted South by Southwest to be where we premiered it for its music focus. So we're really excited, and yeah, we're gonna sell it.
Great. All right. Good luck. Well, if you're still in town, maybe I'll see you around Austin when I get there.
Would love it.
Okay.
Let's talk more music.
Absolutely. Okay. This
Okay,
has been wonderful, Bess. Thank you.
thanks. Appreciate your
Okay.
time.
Bye bye.